The American dream. The idea that anyone with enough hard work and determination can achieve success and prosperity. A key part of that dream? Owning a home. But for millions of Americans, especially younger generations, that dream feels increasingly out of reach. The housing market is in a state of flux, a roller coaster of soaring prices, bidding wars, and a pervasive sense of uncertainty. We've all heard the stories: 20-somethings living with roommates well into their 30s, couples delaying marriage and families because they can't afford a down payment, and the ever-present weight of student loan debt making homeownership feel like a distant fantasy. Millennials and Gen Z, often dubbed the renter generations, are entering adulthood in a vastly different economic landscape than their parents. The cost of living has skyrocketed, wages haven't kept pace, and the dream of homeownership feels increasingly unattainable. Meanwhile, older generations, many of whom benefited from more affordable housing markets in their younger years, are sitting on significant home equity. This generational wealth gap has profound implications. So what's behind this perfect storm brewing in the housing market? A confluence of factors is driving prices to record highs and leaving many feeling priced out. First, we have historically low interest rates. For years, rock-bottom interest rates made borrowing money cheap, fueling demand for homes and driving up prices. Add to that a shortage of housing supply. We simply aren't building enough homes to keep up with demand, especially in desirable areas. To understand the current state of the U.S. housing market, we need to take a trip back in time. Remember the housing boom of the early 2000s? It wasn't just about reality TV shows and flipping houses for profit. A complex web of factors fueled that boom, ultimately leading to a devastating bust. One key factor was the rise of subprime mortgages. These loans, often with adjustable rates and low initial payments, were marketed to borrowers with poor credit and limited financial literacy. As these risky loans flooded the market, demand for housing soared. The year 2008 marked a turning point, not just for the U.S. housing market, but for the global economy. The subprime mortgage crisis, as it came to be known, triggered a financial meltdown that sent shockwaves around the world. Defaults and foreclosures skyrocketed like a domino effect, bringing down financial institutions that had heavily invested in mortgage-backed securities. These securities, once considered safe investments, turned toxic, spreading the contagion throughout the financial system. Banks stopped lending, businesses shut down, and the stock market plummeted. The government stepped in with massive bailouts to prevent a complete economic collapse, but the damage was done. The years following the 2008 crisis were marked by a slow and painful recovery. The housing market, once a symbol of American prosperity, lay in shambles. Prices plummeted, foreclosures soared, and the dream of homeownership seemed out of reach for millions. In the ashes of the crisis, a new landscape emerged. Large institutional investors, flush with cash, swooped in to buy up distressed properties at bargain prices. They became the new landlords, amassing vast portfolios of rental properties. As the dust settled from the 2008 crisis, a new player emerged in the U.S. housing market, the mega landlord. These institutional investors, often backed by Wall Street money, saw an opportunity in the wreckage. With prices depressed and a glut of foreclosed properties on the market, they swooped in, buying up homes and apartment buildings at scale. These mega landlords, with their deep pockets and sophisticated data analytics, brought a new level of efficiency and scale to the rental market. They renovated properties, streamlined management, and raised rents, often significantly. While some argued that this institutionalization of the rental market brought much-needed stability and professionalism, others worried about the growing concentration of ownership and the potential impact on affordability. The rise of mega landlords is just one example of how the 2008 housing crisis reshaped the U.S. housing market. Let's get back to basics, shall we? Economics 101. Remember the law of supply and demand? It's like the law of gravity for markets. What goes up must come down, and when demand outstrips supply, prices go through the roof. The U.S. housing market is a textbook example of this principle in action. We have a classic case of too much money chasing too few houses. On the demand side, we've got a growing population, a strong economy, despite recent hiccups, and historically low interest rates making borrowing cheap and fueling demand. Remember those mega landlords we talked about earlier? Well, they're not the only ones gobbling up properties. Individual investors, both domestic and foreign, are also pouring money into the U.S. housing market, further squeezing supply and driving up prices. Why are investors so bullish on U.S. real estate? Well, for starters, it's seen as a relatively safe and stable investment, especially compared to the volatility of the stock market. Plus, with rents rising and demand for rental properties strong, investors see an opportunity to generate passive income. But here's the thing. When investors buy up properties, they're often outbidding individual buyers, particularly first-time home buyers who are already struggling to cobble together a down payment. Millennials, the generation that was supposed to inherit the earth, are instead inheriting a housing market that feels increasingly rigged against them. Saddled with student loan debt, stagnant wages, and a soaring cost of living, many millennials are finding it nearly impossible to afford a down payment, let alone qualify for a mortgage. They're delaying major life milestones like marriage and starting families because they simply can't afford the housing costs. They're living with roommates well into their 30s, sacrificing space and privacy for a shot at financial stability. The American dream, for many millennials, feels like a distant and increasingly unattainable goal. The pandemic. It upended just about everything, didn't it? And the housing market was no exception. Suddenly, millions of people found themselves working from home, kids were attending school virtually, and the traditional commute became a distant memory. This seismic shift in how we live, work, and learn had a ripple effect on the housing market, accelerating existing trends and creating new ones. With remote work becoming the new normal for many, people were no longer tethered to their offices. They sought out larger homes, more space, and access to outdoor amenities. The suburbs, once considered a bit passé, suddenly became hot property again. Remember those historically low interest rates we mentioned earlier? Well, they played a starring role in the housing market drama. For years, rock-bottom rates made borrowing money cheap and easy, fueling demand for homes and sending prices soaring. But as with all good, or in this case artificially inflated things, the party couldn't last forever. In 2022, the Federal Reserve began raising interest rates in an effort to combat inflation, which had reached a 40-year high. The era of cheap mortgages came to an end, and the housing market felt the chill. Section 1. Bubble trouble. Are we headed for a crash? The B word, is the U.S. housing market headed for a crash? We've seen this movie before, haven't we? The music swells, the tension mounts, and then, boom! Prices plummet, foreclosures skyrocket, and the dream of homeownership turns into a nightmare. But is this time different? The short answer is, maybe. The long answer is, it's complicated. There are some parallels to the mid-2000s bubble, but also key differences. Lending standards are stricter now, reducing risky subprime mortgages. Demand remains strong, driven by demographics and supply shortages. However, there are red flags. Prices are rising unsustainably, outstripping wage growth. Rising interest rates make borrowing more expensive. And let's not forget about inflation. It's eating away at purchasing power, making homes less affordable. So, is a crash inevitable? Not necessarily. The market is cooling and a correction is possible. Whether it's a soft landing or a hard thud remains to be seen. Remember that frenzied housing market we saw just a year ago? The bidding wars, the all-cash offers, the houses selling for way over asking price? Well, things are starting to look a little different these days. The market is showing signs of slowing down, with some cracks appearing in the once impenetrable facade. Inventory is finally starting to increase. After months of record-low supply, more homes are hitting the market, giving buyers more options to choose from. This is partly due to rising interest rates, which have cooled demand from some buyers, and partly due to sellers who are eager to cash in on the recent price gains before the market potentially turns. Speaking of price gains, those are also starting to moderate. While home prices are still rising in most areas, the pace of growth has slowed considerably. In some markets, we're even seeing prices dip slightly from their recent peaks. This suggests that the days of double-digit price appreciation might be behind us, at least for now. Another sign of a slowdown: homes are staying on the market longer. Gone are the days when houses were flying off the shelves within hours of being listed. Buyers are now taking their time, doing their due diligence, and negotiating harder. The days of feeling pressured to make an offer sight unseen are fading into memory. Economists and real estate experts love making predictions about the future, but predicting the housing market is a fool's errand. Some experts see a temporary slowdown, others foresee a correction. Rising interest rates and potential recession add to the uncertainty. The truth is, no one knows for sure what the future holds. Whether you're a seasoned homeowner, a first-time buyer, or somewhere in between, navigating the current housing market can feel like sailing through a storm. But fear not, intrepid sailor. With the right strategies, you can weather the storm and come out ahead. For buyers, the key is to be patient, strategic, and realistic about your budget. Don't let the fear of missing out, FOMO, drive your decisions. Take your time, do your research, and be prepared to walk away if a deal doesn't feel right. Remember, it's a buyer's market now, so you have more leverage than you might think. Sellers, on the other hand, need to adjust their expectations. The days of receiving multiple offers above asking price are dwindling. Be prepared to price your home competitively, stage it to highlight its best features, and be flexible with negotiations. Working with an experienced real estate agent who knows the local market inside and out can also give you an edge. No matter what the future holds for the housing market, it's important to remember that real estate is a long game. Don't let short-term fluctuations dictate your decisions. Focus on your financial goals, your lifestyle needs, and your long-term vision for your housing situation. The cost of living conundrum: more than just housing. Let's be real. The housing market is just one piece of the affordability puzzle. It's like a game of Jenga, where pulling out one block, housing, reveals a whole stack of other wobbly blocks threatening to topple the whole structure. We're talking about the ever-increasing cost of living, a relentless upward march that's putting the squeeze on household budgets across America. Sure, housing costs are a major culprit, often consuming the lion's share of our hard-earned income. But it's not just rent or mortgage payments, it's the hidden costs of homeownership, like property taxes, insurance, and maintenance, that can quickly add up. And then there's the cost of actually living in those homes: utilities, groceries, transportation, the list goes on. We're facing a perfect storm of rising costs. Inflation rearing its ugly head, supply chain disruptions driving up prices, and stagnant wages failing to keep pace. It's no wonder so many Americans, especially younger generations, are feeling the pinch. They're caught in a vicious cycle of trying to make ends meet while watching their dreams of financial security slip further away. The wage-price gap, a tale of two Americas. Here's a sobering statistic. While the cost of living has been steadily climbing for decades, wages for many Americans have remained stagnant. It's a tale of two Americas: those who have benefited from a booming stock market and rising asset values, and those who are struggling to keep their heads above water as the cost of basic necessities outpaces their earnings. This wage-price gap is a major driver of the affordability crisis. It's like trying to run up a down escalator. You're working harder than ever, but you're not making any progress. This gap is particularly pronounced for younger generations, who are entering the workforce with record levels of student loan debt and facing a job market that often rewards experience over entry-level positions. The result? A generation is delaying major life milestones, buying a home, getting married, starting a family, because they simply can't afford it. They're stuck in a cycle of renting, working multiple jobs, and putting their dreams on hold. This isn't just an economic issue, it's a societal one. When a significant portion of the population is struggling to make ends meet, it undermines the very fabric of our society. The future of affordability. Can we bridge the gap? So what's the solution to this affordability crisis? If there were a magic wand to wave or a simple policy fix, we'd have solved this problem long ago. The reality is it's a complex issue with no easy answers. It requires a multi-pronged approach, addressing both the supply and demand sides of the equation. On the supply side, we need to build more housing, plain and simple. This means tackling restrictive zoning laws, incentivizing developers to build more affordable units, and investing in infrastructure to support growing communities. We also need to address the shortage of skilled labor in the construction industry, which is contributing to rising building costs. On the demand side, we need to find ways to make housing more affordable for everyday Americans. This could include expanding housing assistance programs, providing tax breaks for first-time homebuyers, and exploring innovative financing models that make homeownership more accessible. And let's not forget about the elephant in the room: student loan debt. Addressing this crushing burden would free up income for younger generations, allowing them to save for down payments and enter the housing market. Section 4. Generation Rent or Generation Own. A pivotal moment. We stand at a pivotal moment. The decisions we make today will determine whether Millennials and Gen Z become Generation Rent forever, or whether they'll have a shot at achieving the American dream of homeownership. It's not just about bricks and mortar, it's about equity, opportunity, and the future of our society. If we continue down the current path, we risk exacerbating existing inequalities, creating a generation burdened by debt and priced out of the housing market. This could have far-reaching consequences, impacting everything from family formation and economic mobility to social cohesion and political stability. But it doesn't have to be this way. By addressing the root causes of the affordability crisis, we can create a more equitable and sustainable housing market, one where homeownership is within reach for all Americans, not just the privileged few. This requires a collective effort from policymakers, industry leaders, and everyday citizens. It's time to demand solutions, to hold our leaders accountable, and to fight for a future where the American dream is within reach for all. Section 1. The crushing weight of the possible. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? From the historical echoes of the 2008 housing crash to the current affordability crisis gripping the nation, it's clear that the U.S. housing market is at a crossroads. The forces at play are complex and interconnected, a tangled web of economic policies, market dynamics, and societal shifts. But amidst the data points and expert opinions, it's crucial to remember the human cost of this crisis. For millions of Americans, especially younger generations, the dream of homeownership feels increasingly out of reach, a distant promise fading into the horizon. They're burdened by student loan debt, stagnant wages, and a soaring cost of living that's squeezing their budgets and forcing them to make impossible choices. The weight of these challenges is immense, casting a shadow over their aspirations and fueling a sense of uncertainty about the future. We've seen how the pandemic exacerbated existing inequalities, how the rise of mega landlords and institutional investors has reshaped the market, and how the law of supply and demand, when applied to a market as essential as housing, can have profound consequences for individuals and families. Section 2. A glimmer of hope on the horizon. The picture we've painted may seem bleak, but it's not without hope. As we've discussed, there are signs that the housing market is cooling down. Inventory is slowly increasing, price growth is moderating, and buyers are regaining some negotiating power. This doesn't mean a crash is inevitable or that affordability will magically return overnight, but it does suggest that a rebalancing is underway. Moreover, there's a growing awareness of the affordability crisis and its far-reaching consequences. Policymakers are beginning to explore solutions, from zoning reform and affordable housing initiatives to programs aimed at reducing student loan debt and boosting wages. The private sector is also stepping up, with some developers shifting their focus to building more affordable units and innovative financing models emerging to help bridge the gap for first-time homebuyers. The path forward will require a sustained and multifaceted effort, a commitment to addressing the root causes of the affordability crisis rather than just treating the symptoms. It will demand collaboration, innovation, and a willingness to challenge the status quo. Section 3. Reclaiming the Dream, a call to action. The future of the American dream, particularly the dream of homeownership, hangs in the balance. Will we continue down a path where housing becomes increasingly out of reach for all but the wealthiest few? Or will we choose to create a more equitable and sustainable future, one where everyone has a chance to achieve financial security and build a better life for themselves and their families? This isn't just a question for economists, policymakers, or real estate moguls. It's a question for all of us. We all have a role to play in shaping the future of housing in America. Educate yourself about the issues, engage in conversations about solutions, and hold your elected officials accountable for creating policies that promote affordability and opportunity for all. Support organizations working to increase access to affordable housing, advocate for policies that address the wage-price gap and student loan debt crisis, and consider how you can use your own voice and resources to make a difference in your community. The challenges are real, but so is our collective power to create a more just and equitable future. The time for action is now. Let's reclaim the dream together.